So if I had to ask you all, if you're creative, I have a pretty good feeling that a lot of you would say, no, no, I'm not creative. And my answer to you would then be, no, you're wrong. You are creative. You're all creative in your own individual ways, just in different ways, but you're all equally creative, just as each other. The key to the mind hack is to not think outside the box. Let's think inside the box. So I'm going to take it back a couple years to when I was in high school. I used to coach an elementary school team of little kids, and they would be given a task like, I give you guys a clock, and I take that second hand off the clock. Now I want you to replace the second hand on the clock with something unique. So go ahead, think about it. A lot of you might say something like, oh, a toothpick, a needle, something of the same size and dimension as an actual second hand, you know? If you're really creative, or not that creative, but if you're thinking a little bit more outside the box, maybe you'll say something like, oh, a toothbrush, a spoon, you know, something a little bit out there. But how do we get to that 5-point answer? Because I was rating these kids from a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most creative, 1 being the least creative. And I needed to get a way to get my kids to give answers that were 5-point answers consistently every single time. And I couldn't just keep on telling them, oh, okay, guys, think outside the box, you know, be different, think different. I needed to give them something that they could rely on every single time, you know? And what I did is that I had these kids start making a limitation for themselves. I had them say, okay, so now you have to replace the second hand, and now the second hand has to be green. And they would start saying things like, oh, it's going to be a dinosaur's tail, or it's going to be Elphaba, the witch's finger, you know? I said, now let's make the second hand alive. And now they would say things like Angelina Jolie's right leg. That was back in the day. Back then. They would say things like stick bug. They would say things like giraffe. All of a sudden, because they had a limitation, they started thinking more creatively because they're using that limitation to fuel and make a guideline for them to reach that more creative response. It was filtering out the cliche. It was filtering out the needle, the toothpick, the twig. It was filtering out all of that.
I wanted to share with you, it reminds me of a TED Talk that I watched recently called How to Trick Your Mind into Being More Creative. And he talked about an experiment that was done where students, like teenagers, were given a problem to solve, well, like a creative problem where you have the hands of the clock, and one of the hands was taken out, and they were asked to replace one of those hands with anything they wanted. And when they were given no limitations, they were very boring. They would give answers like, a toothpick, you know, the typical, you know, replacement.
Right.
But when they were given a limitation like, it has to be a living being, that you have to replace with something to do with a living being. And they would say stuff like, oh, the leg of a dinosaur. And I was like, whoa, how did they come up with that?
Huh.
So the irony is when they were given the limits, they became more creative.
I have a perfect example with that myself.
Yeah.
A blues song will have a particular blues chord progression.
Uh-huh.
It's the 1 chord, which is the home chord. Then there's a 4 chord, which takes you off onto a little bit of a journey. Then you hit the climactic chord, which is the 5 chord.
Uh-huh.
That's the one with the most dissonance and tension, and it wants to be resolved back to 1 chord. So it's a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. Just 3 chords. That's it. Now, you know, there's 12 notes in music, in Western music anyway.
Yeah.
And you would think that if you had all 12 notes to play with, you'd be more creative. Paradoxically, by superimposing a constraint like the chord progression, or if I improvise and instead of choosing 12 notes or 8 notes, I'm going to improvise a solo with 3 notes. And so those are the 3 like posts that I get to weave my creativity around. So that constraint actually opens me up to, and necessitates actually, more creativity.
Yeah. So it's like the limitations that life throws at us, that the universe throws at us, are themselves a gift that allows us to be more creative and bloom our genius in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing. I love paradox for that reason.
Yeah.